The galaxy was not silent that night. Across thousands of star systems, a strange sound filled the airwaves of every station. It was not music, it was not speech, it was a cry. A desperate call for help that seemed to echo from the deepest parts of space. The message carried fear, panic, and the weight of civilizations falling. Every race heard it. Every empire, from the oldest to the youngest, paused and listened. And then, they chose silence. In the council halls of mighty alien powers, leaders whispered to each other in quiet terror. The message was clear. A predator had awakened, something powerful enough to burn whole fleets and silence entire worlds. No one knew exactly what it was, but everyone felt the same dread. Across the stars, no one dared to answer. Their fear was stronger than their duty. They closed their ears and hid behind their borders, hoping the storm would pass them by. But on Earth, the story was different. Humanity was young among the stars. Their fleets were small compared to the great empires. Their worlds were few. And yet, when the signal reached the blue planet, the people of Earth listened not with silence, but with fire in their hearts. The leaders of Earth did not hide. They did not pretend the danger would disappear. They gathered in war rooms, looking at the decoded message again and again. And finally, they gave the order no other race had the courage to give. Prepare the fleet. The cry for help was not ignored on Earth. It was answered. Admiral Marcus Halley stood on the bridge of the battleship Resolute. His eyes were fixed on the dark screen that replayed the signal. The alien voice was broken, filled with static, but the fear inside was real. He had seen many battles, but never a message like this. He turned to his officers, his voice steady, though the weight of history pressed down on him. "If no one else will go," he said, "then humanity will. We will not leave the galaxy to die alone." The order spread quickly. Across Earth and its colonies, soldiers were called, ships were fueled, and weapons were loaded. Families wept as loved ones boarded transports. Many knew they might never see each other again. But still they went. For the first time in history, humanity was not fighting for itself alone. It was fighting for stranger civilizations that mocked them, ignored them, even despised them. And yet, humans answered their cry. The fleet gathered at the edge of the Sol system. Dozens of warships, carriers, and support vessels floated in the dark, their engines burning bright. The stars reflected off their steel hulls, as if the heavens themselves were watching. Pilots checked their systems, engineers tightened final bolts, and soldiers prayed quietly in their bunks. Above them all, the flag of Earth flew, a symbol of defiance in the face of fear. In distant galaxies, alien spies watched in disbelief. Reports reached the great empires. Humanity was moving. Humanity was answering the call that everyone else ignored. Some alien leaders laughed, calling it foolishness. "The humans are throwing themselves into the fire," they said. "They will be the first to burn." Others watched in silence, uneasy, knowing there was something different about these strange creatures from Earth. The jump coordinates were set. The destination was the source of the signal. A star system once filled with life, now dark and broken. No one knew what awaited them there, but the fleet was ready. The countdown began, and one by one, the ships vanished into the fold of faster-than-light travel. Earth had spoken. Earth had answered. The journey through the void was silent, but inside the ships, tension grew heavy. Young soldiers sat in the mess halls, staring at their rations without eating. Veterans checked their weapons again and again, knowing habit was the only thing keeping their hands from shaking. Commanders walked the decks, speaking softly to their crews, giving courage where fear had grown. Humanity had faced wars before. They had faced extinction on their own world. But this was different. This was a step into the unknown, against an enemy no one dared to fight. Admiral Halley stood alone at the observation deck, staring at the stars streaking by. He thought of the message again, of the voice filled with terror. He thought of the alien children who might be crying somewhere in the dark, waiting for someone to save them. "Hold on," he whispered to himself. "We are coming." Hours later, the fleet emerged from the fold. The system before them was in ruins. Planets once bright with cities now lay dark and silent. Asteroid belts carried the broken pieces of ships that had fought and died. The remains of mighty armadas drifted like corpses in the void. Fires still burned in the atmosphere of shattered worlds. Humanity had arrived in the graveyard of an empire. A hush fell over the crews as they looked upon the destruction. This was not war. This was slaughter. No battle had been fought here, only extermination. Scanners picked up fragments of signals, the last echoes of civilizations that had been erased. The soldiers clenched their fists. The officers stared in grim silence. They all felt the same truth. Whatever had done this was not just an enemy. It was a nightmare made real. Suddenly, a faint signal broke through the static. A distress beacon, weak and failing. The fleet traced it to the wreckage of a massive alien dreadnought. Against all odds, someone was still alive. Rescue ships moved quickly, cutting through twisted metal and shattered decks. Deep inside, they found survivors broken, bleeding, but alive. The aliens looked at their human rescuers with shock and disbelief. "You came," one of them whispered, their voice trembling. "You should not have come. It will see you now." The words chilled every soldier who heard them. What was this thing that even survivors feared to speak of? The rescued commander spoke again before collapsing. "It is hunger. It is endless. You cannot fight it." The medics carried the survivors back, but the warning spread across the fleet. A shadow had noticed them. Humanity was no longer just an observer. They had stepped into the sight of the predator. And once seen, there was no turning back. Admiral Hale called his officers together. The war room was silent except for the low hum of machines. "We have seen what it did here," he said. "We know what awaits us, but if we turn back now, the galaxy dies in silence. We are the only fleet that chose to answer. If we fall, then at least we fall standing." His officers saluted, their faces grim but determined. Fear was heavy, but resolve was heavier. The first part of the mission was complete. Humanity had answered the call. They had entered the graveyard of stars, and now the eyes of the unknown enemy were upon them. No one knew what would come next. But one truth was clear. When the galaxy cried for help, only Earth listened. The fleet powered forward, engines burning against the endless dark. The silence of the ruined system pressed on them, but still they moved. For humanity was young, reckless, and unafraid to bleed. And in that courage, a new chapter of the galaxy was about to begin. The human fleet drifted through the broken system like shadows in the night. Wreckage floated everywhere, silent reminders of battles already lost. Entire planets hung dead and gray, stripped of life. The stars themselves seemed dimmer here, as if afraid to shine upon the graveyard. Every soldier, every officer, every pilot felt the weight of it. They had answered the call for help, but now they wondered if they had stepped into something far greater than they understood. Admiral Marcus Hawley stood on the command deck of the battleship Resolute. His eyes moved across the holographic display of the system. Red markers covered the map, each one showing destroyed ships and shattered stations. There were so many that the map itself looked like a field of blood. "This was no war," Hale said quietly. "This was erasure." The crew listened in silence. No one argued. The evidence was all around them. Great alien fleets, once powerful enough to crush armies, now drifted as lifeless debris. No distress signals remained, no organized defenses. Whatever had struck the system had done so with a force beyond reason. Humanity had come expecting a battle. Instead, they found the aftermath of something closer to extinction. The weak survivors they had rescued from the alien dreadnought remained in the medical bay. Most were too injured or too terrified to speak. But one, a commander named Veyer, had whispered warnings before collapsing into unconsciousness. His words haunted the officers. "It is hunger. It is endless. You cannot fight it." Those words passed through the fleet like a dark wind, chilling everyone who heard them. What kind of enemy could shatter entire civilizations and still be hungry? Captain Elena Torres, commander of the carrier Valiant, joined Holly on the bridge. Through a hololink. Her voice was steady, but her face showed concern. "We need to know what we are dealing with, Admiral. Our people are brave, but bravery alone cannot fight the unknown. Do we have any scans of what destroyed this system?" "Nothing." "Clear," Holly replied. "Our sensors detect strange energy signatures across the wreckage, but no specific form. It moves like a storm. Everywhere and nowhere. Whatever did this is still out there." Those words left the crew uneasy. The idea of an invisible enemy, a storm that consumed entire worlds, pressed on their minds. Soldiers whispered in the lower decks, wondering if they had walked into their own doom. Yet, despite their fear, no one spoke of retreat. Humanity had come this far. To turn back now would be to dishonor every life lost in the burning systems. The fleet moved deeper into the ruins, scanning what remained. Drone ships flew ahead, their cameras sending back haunting images, cities torn apart, oceans boiled into steam, moons cracked into pieces. The galaxy had cried for help, and this was the answer to why no one had dared respond. The cost was clear. To face this enemy was to face death itself. Then the signal came, faint, weak, almost broken. A distress beacon pulsed from the far edge of the system. Halle ordered the fleet forward at once. If survivors remained, they had to be found. Engines roared as the warships cut through the dark, moving like predators toward their prey. But this time, humanity was not the predator. Something else was watching. When they reached the source, they found a massive orbital station, half destroyed and hanging in silence. Fires burned inside its broken halls. Most of the outer ring had been torn apart, but deep inside, the beacon still pulsed. Rescue teams were launched. Marines in armored suits moved through the broken corridors, weapons ready. They expected traps. They expected monsters. Instead, they found survivors weak, starving, clinging to life. Alien children cried in the arms of their wounded parents. Soldiers, once proud, lay dying on the metal floors. The sight was heartbreaking, even for hardened humans. One survivor, an elder of their species, looked at the human soldiers with wide eyes. "Why?" he asked in a trembling voice. "Why did you come?" None of the others did. The human commander answered simply, "Because you asked." The survivors wept. For them, the galaxy had already abandoned hope. But humanity had come. And that meant hope still lived. Yet even as the survivors were rescued, warnings came again. "It is still here," whispered the elder. "It does not stop. It follows the cry. It will follow you." Back aboard the Resolute, Admiral High listened carefully. He knew now that their presence had been noticed. The enemy, whatever it was, would not ignore them. The humans had made themselves a new target, and yet he felt no regret. To abandon the galaxy was not in humanity's nature. They had faced the unknown before. They had faced extinction on Earth itself. If they had to face it again, then so be it. Then the first sign appeared. Long-range sensors picked up movement at the edge of the system. It was not a fleet, not a ship, not anything their scanners could understand. It was a mass, a living storm. The data flickered and failed, unable to capture its true form. But the sheer size of it was undeniable. It stretched across space like a shadow, swallowing light as it moved. Soldiers stared at the screens in disbelief. This was the thing that had ended entire civilizations. The swarm approached. Panic rippled through the fleet, but the admirals gave firm orders. Defensive lines were drawn. Fighters launched from the carriers. Battleships powered their cannons. Every human heart beat fast with fear, but also with defiance. They had not come this far to run. If the enemy wanted them, then it would have to fight for them. The first wave struck. It was not metal or fire that came at them, but creatures. Millions of them, swarming through the void, living weapons of flesh and shadow. Their bodies twisted and bent in impossible shapes, claws flashing like blades, wings cutting through the vacuum of space as if it were air. The humans opened fire. Space lit up with explosions, beams, and missiles. Thousands of the creatures burned, torn apart by the fury of human weapons. But for every one that died, 10 more appeared. The battle became chaos. Fighters dodged through swarms, cutting down enemies only to be ripped apart seconds later. Battleships fired broadside after broadside, tearing chunks of the enemy into dust. Carriers launched wave after wave of reinforcements. The humans fought with everything they had, but the enemy never slowed. It was endless, just as the survivors had warned Dot inside the Resolute. Alarms blared. Hulls cracked. Engines roared at full power. The humans fought desperately, holding their line against the storm. And then, something happened that no alien fleet had ever achieved before they heard it. For the first time, the enemy's advance slowed. The swarm shifted, pulling back from the intensity of human fire. Shock spread through the fleet. They could fight it. They could bleed it, but victory came at a cost. Dozens of ships were lost. Thousands of soldiers gave their lives. Screams filled the comm channels, cut off by silence as ships exploded. The void was littered with wreckage once more, but this time it was mixed with the remains of the enemy. Humanity had paid in blood, but they had done what no one else had dared. They had stood against the storm and survived. Admiral Hale's voice echoed through every ship. "We hold the line. Humanity does not run." His words gave strength to the weary, courage to the broken. The soldiers of Earth tightened their grips on their weapons and fought harder. They knew they could die here. But they also knew this. They had proven that the enemy was not unstoppable. The galaxy had believed the storm could not be fought. Humanity had just proven otherwise. As the swarm pulled back into the shadows, the fleet regrouped. Fires burned, hulls were patched, and the dead were mourned. But amid the sorrow, there was hope. They had survived the first encounter. They had shown that the predator could bleed, yet Holly knew this was only the beginning. The survivors had warned them. The hunger was endless. This battle was not the war. It was the first step into something far darker. And now humanity stood alone against it. As the fleet prepared for what came next, one truth rang clear through every heart. When the galaxy cried for help, only Earth had answered. And now, Earth was the shield standing against the unknown. The question that remained was simple but terrifying. How long could they hold the line? The silence after the battle was heavy. Human warships drifted among burning wreckage, their hulls scarred, their crews exhausted. The smell of smoke and steel filled every corridor. Men and women sat with their heads in their hands, knowing they had survived something that was not supposed to be survivable. Yet no one felt relief. The swarm had pulled back, but everyone knew it was not gone. It was waiting. Admiral Marcus Halle stood on the bridge of the Resolute. His uniform was torn, his face pale from lack of sleep, but his voice was steady. He studied the scans again, watching the strange energy patterns left behind by the enemy. It was unlike anything human science could fully understand. Where it moved, the very fabric of space bent. Where it fed, nothing remained. "This thing is not a fleet," Halle said to his officers. "It is something else, something alive, and it is learning." The crew shifted uneasily. No alien power had ever forced humanity into such desperation. The swarm did not fight like armies. It fought. Like an endless tide, ships and soldiers meant nothing to it. It simply consumed, piece by piece, until only silence remained. For generations, the galaxy had believed such a predator could not be fought, but humanity had done what no one else had. They had stood, and they had drawn blood in the medical bays. The rescued aliens lay recovering. Their bodies bore scars from battles humans could hardly imagine. Commander Vayer, the survivor who had first spoken of the hunger, regained consciousness. His eyes opened slowly, and when he saw humans watching him, he whispered, "You heard it." His voice was filled with disbelief and something else, hope. "We tried, we all tried. None of us ever slowed it, but you did." Admiral Hale came to him. "What is it? What are we fighting?" he asked. Vayer trembled before answering. "We call it the Void Hunger. It is not a species. It is not an empire. It is a force. It devours. It adapts. Every weapon you use, it learns. Every defense you make, it overcomes. For centuries, it has moved through the dark, destroying quietly. This time, it grew too bold. It silenced whole regions. That is why we cried for help. That is why the galaxy hides." The words struck the officers like thunder. An enemy that never stopped, that grew stronger with every strike, that consumed until nothing remained. It was worse than they feared. Yet even as fear spread, something else burned inside the humans. They had seen the storm retreat. They had seen it bleed. And now they wanted to know how to kill it. The fleet worked quickly. Engineers repaired broken hulls. Scientists studied every fragment of the creatures they had destroyed. The remains were strange, shifting as if still alive, resisting analysis. But slowly, patterns emerged. The swarm was not mindless. It had structure, like a colony, or perhaps a single vast body spread across countless forms. It was both many and one. Destroying its parts hurt it, but the true core remained hidden somewhere beyond reach. Days passed in tense silence as the fleet orbited a shattered planet. Rebuilding strength, pilots trained in new maneuvers. Soldiers drilled in tighter formations. Humanity had always been a species of war, shaped by centuries of conflict. Now, that legacy became their weapon. They adapted quickly, faster than most alien races could imagine. What others called reckless, humans called survival. Then the second attack came. The swarm returned, larger than before. It swept into the system like a storm cloud, blotting out the stars. Alarms rang through every ship. Hawley gave the order at once. All units formed the line, hold them back. The battle began again. This time, the swarm did not rush blindly. It moved with strange patterns, testing defenses, striking weak points. It had learned from the first battle. Fighters were torn apart in ambushes. Battleships were swarmed by creatures that latched onto their hulls, cutting through armor with acid-like claws. Screams filled the comm channels as ships vanished into fire. But humanity adapted too. Gunships formed tight squads, overlapping fields of fire. Destroyers launched traps, mines hidden in debris fields that tore through enemy waves. Carriers rotated fighter wings in relentless cycles, never giving the swarm a chance to breathe. And for every human loss, the swarm paid in blood and fire. Admiral Hale stood firm, his voice steady over the comms. "We do not break. We do not run. Every shot counts. Every life matters. Hold the line." His words became fire in the hearts of his people. Pilots dove through swarms with impossible courage. Marines boarded damaged ships to save their crews, even as enemy claws tore the hull apart. Humanity bled, but it did not fall. Then for the first time they saw it. In the heart of the swarm, hidden behind endless layers of creatures, a vast shape moved. It was colossal, larger than any battleship, its body shifting like liquid shadow. Dozens of glowing eyes opened across its form, watching the humans with A terrible hunger. The swarm was not just an army. It was an extension of this living core. The true enemy had revealed itself. The sight froze even the bravest soldiers. It was like staring into the heart of a nightmare. Yet Hale's voice cut through the fear. "That is it. That is the core. Focus all fire on it." The fleet obeyed. Beams, missiles, railguns all fired into the darkness where the core moved. Explosions tore through the swarm, burning a path toward the creature. For the first time, it recoiled, thrashing against the storm of human fire. The void hunger screamed, a sound that shook through every ship, rattling bones and shattering glass. But even as it bled, it struck back with fury. Waves of creatures hurled themselves at the human line, desperate to protect their core. Ships vanished in fire. Entire squads of fighters were erased in seconds. The humans fought like demons, but the cost was staggering. The carrier Valiant was torn apart, its last transmission a cry of defiance before it exploded. Hundreds of soldiers were lost, but their sacrifice carved open the path. Hawley saw the chance. "All units, concentrate fire." Now, the fleet unleashed everything. Nuclear warheads detonated. Plasma beams sliced through flesh and shadow. Railguns thundered with their last shells. The core of the swarm writhed, its body tearing under the onslaught. For the first time in its existence, the void hunger screamed in pain. And then, as suddenly as it came, it pulled back. The swarm retreated into the dark, dragging its wounded core with it. The battlefield was left in silence once more, littered with wreckage and blood. Humanity had not won, but neither had the swarm. For the first time in history, the predator had been hurt so deeply, it chose to flee. The fleet was broken, but alive. Fires burned in the corridors. Medics carried the wounded. Families wept for the dead. But in the heart of every soldier, something burned brighter than sorrow. Belief. They had seen the enemy. They had faced it. And they had forced it to retreat. Admiral Hawley stood before his officers, his voice rough but strong. "We are not gods. We are not saviors. We are human. And today, humanity made the impossible bleed. Remember this moment. Remember that we are not prey. We are the hunters now." Across the galaxy, hidden watchers trembled. Alien leaders who had mocked humanity now whispered in fear. The void hunger, the storm that had consumed countless empires, had been forced back by the youngest species of the stars. The galaxy had ignored the call for help. Humanity had answered. And now a new legend was rising. But Hawley knew this was not the end. The void hunger would return. It would come stronger, smarter, more furious. The war had only begun. And humanity stood alone. In the silence of the ruined system, the fleet lit their engines once more. Broken, battered, but unbroken in spirit, they prepared for what was coming. The enemy had revealed itself. The hunt was far from over. The battlefield was silent again, but it was not peace. Human ships floated among the wreckage, their lights dim, their hulls torn. Fires still burned in broken decks, and medics rushed through smoke-filled corridors to save the wounded. The smell of blood and metal hung heavy in the air. Humanity had survived the second clash with the swarm, but the cost was terrible. Thousands were dead, ships destroyed, lives shattered. Yet in the hearts of the survivors, something stronger than sorrow burned. They had forced the monster to retreat. They had made the unthinkable bleed. Humanity was no longer prey. Humanity had shown defiance. Admiral Marcus Hawley stood in the war room, irresolute. His uniform was scorched, his eyes hollow from exhaustion, but his presence remained unshaken. Around him, his officers studied the holographic map of the system. Red markers glowed where ships had been lost. Blue markers where survivors still held position. Silence filled the room until Hawley finally spoke. "We heard it. But it will come back. Stronger, smarter. We cannot wait for it to strike again. We must prepare." His words were steady, but everyone knew what they meant. The void hunger had shown itself, and now humanity carried its attention. The predator would not forget the sting. It would not forgive the wound. It would return with fury. And the humans were still alone. Across the galaxy, alien leaders watched in silence. Spies carried reports of the battle to the great empires. At first, many refused to believe the humans had forced the swarm to retreat. They called it lies, exaggerations. But as more data arrived, recordings of the battle, fragments of the swarm, the screams of its core, they could not deny the truth. Humanity had done what none of them had dared. They had defied the storm. And now the galaxy whispered about Earth with fear and awe, yet no help came. The great empires still refused to move. They told themselves the humans would fall soon, that the storm would devour them as it had devoured countless others. They did not want to risk their own fleets. So they watched and they waited, leaving Earth's children to fight alone. But humans did not break. On the Resolute, Admiral Hale called his fleet to order. Repairs began at once. Engineers patched holes in battered hulls. Scientists studied the remains of swarm creatures, searching for weaknesses. Pilots trained day and night, drilling in. New tactics. Humanity had always adapted quickly. It was their greatest strength. And now, that strength would be tested more than ever before. In the laboratories, strange discoveries were made. The fragments of the swarm still pulsed faintly with energy, as if alive even after death. The scientists learned that the creatures were linked, like cells in a vast body. Destroying them hurt the whole, but the true core, the heart of the hunger, remained hidden. Still, they found cracks. The swarm was fast but reckless. It healed, but slowly. If hit hard enough in the right place, it could be stopped. Humanity had no illusions of easy victory, but they had hope. And hope was enough. Among the soldiers, spirits rose. They mourned their dead, but their grief turned into fire. Stories spread of pilots who had fought to their last breath, of Marines who had held corridors until the end, of ships that had gone down with defiance in their final transmissions. Humanity had always remembered its heroes, and now new legends were being born in the void. Admiral Hale addressed the fleet through the comms. His voice was rough but strong. We are not gods. We are not saviors. We are human, and that is enough. The swarm believes it cannot be stopped, but we have already proven it wrong. We will fight. We will adapt. We will show it that humanity does not kneel. His words carried through every deck, every bunk, every heart. Soldiers clenched their fists. Pilots smiled grimly. Fear was still there, but it was no longer in control. Courage had taken its place. Days passed. Repairs continued, and then scouts reported movement. The void hunger was stirring again. The swarm had retreated to the edge of the system, but now it was gathering once more. The humans braced themselves. This battle would decide whether their defiance was only a spark or the beginning of a fire that could spread across the galaxy. The swarm came in silence. It poured into the system like a black sea, stretching across the stars. Millions of creatures, endless and terrible, moved with purpose. At the center, the massive core shifted, its glowing eyes fixed on the human fleet. This time, it did not underestimate them. This time, it came to destroy. Admiral Hale gave the order, all ships, engage. Hold nothing back. The void exploded with light. Human ships unleashed their fury, missiles streaking through the dark. Railguns thundering, plasma beams carving through flesh. Fighters darted between enemy waves, dropping mines, luring swarms into traps. The swarm screamed and struck back, crashing against the human line in endless numbers. Ships shuddered, shields burned, hulls cracked. The humans fought with everything they had. Captain Elena Torres of the carrier Defiance led her fighters into the heart of the storm. Her voice rang in the comms, steady and fierce. Stay tight, strike fast. Don't give them space to breathe. Her squadrons tore through wave after wave, losing many but destroying more. Her courage inspired her pilots. Even as her ship took fire from all sides, on the Resolute, Hawley commanded with calm fury. He moved his fleets like blades, cutting through the swarm with coordinated strikes. Every loss was answered with vengeance. Every gap in the line was filled with fire. The humans were not stronger, they were not more advanced. But they were relentless. They refused to give the swarm what it wanted: fear. Then the core moved again. It surged forward, its colossal body glowing with fury. Dozens of tendrils lashed out, tearing through ships. Whole cruisers vanished in bursts of fire. But humanity struck back. They targeted its eyes, its tendrils, every part that seemed to feel pain. Explosions tore through its body. The core screamed, a sound that rattled bones and made lights flicker. Across every ship, for hours, the battle raged. Losses mounted on both sides. The humans fought until their weapons overheated, until their ships bled fire, until their voices went hoarse from shouting orders. And still, they did not break. The swarm had expected another easy feast. Instead, it found prey that bit back with fire and steel. Finally, the swarm began to falter. Its movements slowed, its waves scattered. The humans pressed harder, driving it back inch by inch. The core shuddered, wounded once again. And then, with a roar that echoed across the stars, it pulled away, retreating into the dark. Humanity had stood against it once more. Humanity had survived. The battlefield was quiet, littered with wreckage and bodies. The cost was terrible. Ships gone. Crews lost, families broken. But amid the grief, there was pride. They had fought the storm, and they had stood tall. For the first time, the galaxy began to believe that the void hunger could be resisted. And it was not the great empires who showed this truth. It was humanity. Admiral Hawley stood before his officers, his voice calm but burning. The swarm will return. It will come for us again, but let it come. We will be ready. We will not kneel. We will not hide. We are humanity, and we defy the dark. His words spread through the fleet, carried on broken radios, whispered in damaged decks, shouted by survivors who refused to give in. Across the stars, hidden watchers trembled. The galaxy had ignored the cry for help. Humanity had answered. And now, humanity had proven that they would not only fight, they would endure. The war was far from over. The void hunger still loomed, endless and terrible. But the galaxy had changed forever. A new name was spoken in whispers, not with mockery, but with awe. Earth. And in the dark, where the swarm licked its wounds, the core burned with fury. It had met defiance unlike anything before, and it would never forget. The next battle would come. The war would continue. But for now, humanity stood tall, unbroken, and unafraid. The void was silent once more, but silence did not mean peace. Humanity's fleet drifted among the ruins of shattered moons and burning ships, scarred by the battles fought and the lives lost. Every deck echoed with quiet grief, every corridor smelled of smoke and oil. The soldiers moved like shadows, their eyes heavy with exhaustion, their hearts heavy with loss. Yet in that silence, a flame burned brighter than fear: determination. Humanity had fought the impossible, and they were ready to fight again. Admiral Marcus Hawley stood on the bridge of the Resolute, his gaze fixed on the distant edge of the system. Sensors flickered with activity, small movements that hinted the void hunger had regrouped. The creature had retreated, but its shadow loomed across every star. Hale's voice was calm, but carried the weight of command. It will come for us again. We cannot wait. We must strike before it finds strength. Across the fleet, engineers repaired hulls, scientists studied the swarm's fragments, and soldiers drilled for the battles to come. Humanity had learned quickly. They adapted faster than any alien empire expected. Every weapon, every tactic, every strategy was sharpened to a deadly edge. The galaxy had ignored their cry for help. Humanity would not allow the predator to return. Stronger, they would meet it head-on. The alien survivors rescued from the first system joined the humans in planning. Commander Veyer, his body weakened but his mind sharp, spoke of the Void Hunger's behavior. "It is not just a force," he warned. "It is intelligence spread across countless bodies. Attack its swarm, it bleeds. Attack its core, it roars. But it is patient. It will not strike recklessly. It will wait. And when it comes, it will destroy without mercy." Holly listened, nodding grimly. "Then we must strike first. We will not wait for it to choose its prey. We will force it into battle on our terms." The plan was daring, even reckless. Humanity would use the fleet as bait, drawing the Void Hunger into a trap where their deadliest weapons waited. Carriers launched squadrons of fighters, destroyers prepared nuclear traps, and battleships positioned railguns and plasma cannons. In hidden formations, every ship, every crew, every weapon was prepared for the ultimate confrontation. The humans knew the cost could be unimaginable, yet they accepted it. Their defiance had become courage, and courage demanded action. Then, the enemy appeared. From the edge of the system, the swarm advanced like a black storm, blotting out the stars with countless forms. Millions of creatures, each deadly and swift, moved with eerie precision. And at the center, the colossal core glowed with fury, its many eyes fixed on the human fleet. The Void Hunger had come for its prey. Hale's voice echoed through the comms. "All units, engage! No mercy, no hesitation. For Earth, for humanity, for every life we protect." The void exploded with fire. Fighters darted through the swarm, dodging claws and wings that moved faster than thought. Missiles streaked across space, railguns thundered, and plasma beams cut through the endless tide. The swarm fought back with relentless fury, lashing at every ship, tearing through defenses. Explosions lit the darkness as ships fell in flames, but humanity held the line. Captain Elena Torres led her fighter squadron through impossible maneuvers, drawing parts of the swarm into traps. Her voice rang with determination. "Push forward. Strike hard. Don't let them surround us." Her pilots responded with courage, diving through the storm, dropping bombs into the enemy heart. Each explosion tore through the swarm, but more came to replace what was lost. The battle was a storm within a storm, chaos against chaos, fire against shadow. On the Resolute, Hull had coordinated the fleet like a master conductor. Battleships unleashed volleys that tore through the enemy lines. Destroyers moved with precision, cutting off attacks before they reached the fleet. Carriers rotated waves of fighters into gaps, preventing the swarm from overwhelming any point. Humanity fought with every weapon, every tactic, every ounce of courage, and still the Void Hunger adapted. It had learned from every battle, every strike. Every victory was met with a counter. The human fleet paid a terrible cost. Ships exploded. In firestorms, fighters vanished, crews were lost. The void itself seemed alive with the screams of the dying. But even as they fell, humanity struck back harder. Every death was answered with vengeance, every loss with renewed fire. They refused to give the swarm what it desired, fear and surrender. Then, the core surged forward. Its massive body moved through the swarm with terrifying power, glowing eyes, burning with hatred. It lashed at battleships, tearing through shields, cracking hulls, swallowing ships whole. For a moment, the humans felt despair. Could they truly destroy such a force? Could they survive the fury of a creature that had ended entire empires? But they did not falter. Holly gave the order. Concentrate fire on the core. Every weapon, every strike, aim for its eyes, its tendrils, its heart. Do not stop until it falls. Missiles, railgun slugs, and plasma beams rained down on the core. Explosions tore through its massive body. The swarm shrieked in fury, but the humans pressed the attack. Pilots flew through impossible paths, diving into the heart of the enemy to drop bombs and strike critical points. Marines boarded destroyed ships to launch ambush attacks from inside the swarm. Humanity was relentless, and the core began to falter. It roared, a sound that shook ships, rattled bones, and lit the void with a terrible glow. But even as it screamed, the humans did not yield. They had learned, adapted, and now they struck with precision. The core's many eyes flickered, its tendrils tore, and its body shuddered under the combined force of human fire. Hours passed in unending battle. Losses mounted, but humanity did not give in. Pilots and soldiers fought until exhaustion, until shields failed, until weapons burned out. And then, at last, the core broke. A final surge of fire and plasma ripped through its heart. It screamed one last time, a sound that shook the fleet to its foundations. And then it exploded. The void hunger, the predator that had ended countless civilizations, was no more. Silence returned to the void. The fleet drifted among wreckage, exhausted but victorious. Fires burned, but humanity had endured. The cost had been terrible, but they had triumphed. Ships were lost, crews were gone, but the galaxy had been saved. The humans had done what no one else had dared. Admiral Hawley addressed the fleet. His voice was rough from shouting, but filled with pride. "We have fought the impossible. We have faced the end of countless worlds and survived. Today, humanity roared, and the galaxy heard it. Remember this. Remember that courage is not born from power, but from the heart." Today, Earth stood against the darkness, and we won. Across the galaxy, alien leaders who had mocked humanity now whispered in awe. The void hunger was gone, destroyed by a species they had considered weak and reckless. Humanity had proven that courage, unity, and defiance could change the fate of the stars. Earth was no longer a new player. It was a legend, yet even in victory, humanity mourned. Ships burned in the void, crews were lost, families shattered. Tears were shed for every life, every sacrifice, every soul that had given everything. But amid the grief, there was pride. Pride in courage. Pride in survival. Pride in standing alone when the galaxy had ignored the call for help. Hawley looked out at the stars, the darkness now calm, the swarm destroyed. He thought of every soldier, every pilot, every scientist who had fought. Humanity had answered the cry for help. Humanity had endured. Humanity had roared, and the galaxy would never forget.